The hook. The night sky was quiet, but far above the earth a hidden ship drifted in silence. It was large and dark, its surface glowing faintly with blue lights that looked like frozen stars. Inside the ship, a woman stood at the window, her eyes fixed on the small world below. Her name was Leora, once a commander among the stars, a leader feared and respected. But now she was only a shadow, a fugitive who had left her people behind. And tonight, her gaze was not on the earth as a planet, but on a single person who lived there. A human, a man named Daniel. Leora touched the glass softly, as if the distance between her and the planet could break with a simple touch. Her heart, though alien, beat with a rhythm that felt human when she thought of him. She remembered the way he smiled when he solved a problem, the way his eyes shone with stubborn courage. She had seen countless warriors, countless heroes, yet none like him. Daniel was different, and that difference was why she had once fallen in love. A forbidden love, one she had been forced to abandon. But destiny, it seemed, was cruel and kind at the same time, because now she was back for him. Her ship's console beeped, and a signal repeated on the screen. It was faint, almost broken, but the sound carried a familiar voice. Leora froze, her hand trembling. She pressed the controls, and the words became clear. It was Daniel's voice, recorded and sent into the sky, as if he was speaking to the stars. "I don't know if you can hear this," the voice said, "but sometimes I feel like you are still out there." He paused, and the silence hurt more than any weapon could. "I should hate you for leaving me, but I can't. I still wait. Even if it's foolish, I wait." The message ended, but the echo of his voice filled her ship like a storm of memory. Leora closed her eyes. She had fought in wars, commanded fleets, watched empires rise and fall. But nothing had broken her like those words. He still waited, even after all the years. He had not forgotten her. She felt her chest tighten, the weight of guilt pressing down. She whispered, "Daniel, I should never have left." Her voice cracked in the silence, and the stars beyond the window seemed to judge her. Long ago, she had chosen duty. Her people had called her back to the stars. They had promised her glory, leadership, a place among the greatest of her kind. But that life had been empty. Every victory on the battlefield felt hollow. Every speech, every command, every order only reminded her of what she had lost. She had given up love, and in doing so, had given up her soul. And now she was no longer commander, no longer hero. She was only a wanderer who wanted to return to one man. The ship shook slightly as it entered the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere. The shields glowed faintly, hiding her descent from the eyes of satellites and radars. It was dangerous to come here. Her enemies could be tracking her. But Leora no longer cared. If danger followed her, then it followed. She had one mission, and that mission was Daniel. Her eyes glowed with determination as the ship sliced through the clouds. The city lights below sparkled like a sea of stars. It reminded her of the galaxies she had once commanded, but now she saw only Earth. And somewhere in those glowing streets, he was waiting. Leora's mind returned to the day she had left him. The memory was sharp, like a wound that never healed. Daniel had stood there in the cold night, begging her not to go. "Stay, Leora. I don't care who you are or where you come from," he had said. "You are more than the stars. You are everything." But she had turned away, tears hidden behind the mask of duty. Her ship had risen into the sky, leaving him small and broken behind her. And for years, she carried that image, his figure shrinking into the distance. She thought he would forget her, thought time would erase her from his heart. But his message proved her wrong. He had never let go, and neither had she. The ship landed quietly in the shadow of a forest outside the city. Steam rose from its hull as it cooled. Leora stepped onto the ground, her boots sinking into soft soil. The night air was cold but alive, filled with the smell of earth. It was strange how much she had missed this world. The sounds of insects, the rustle of leaves, the way the wind carried whispers. She stood there for a moment, breathing deeply. Then she lifted her eyes to the distant city. He was there, somewhere under those lights. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with something stronger. Hope. Yet in the shadows of the forest, something else moved. Unseen eyes followed her, shapes hidden between the trees. Her return had not gone unnoticed. Leora did not know yet, but danger had already arrived with her. She was not the only one who had crossed the stars. And soon, Earth would know the price of her love. The human connection. Daniel sat alone in his small workshop, the room lit by the soft glow of scattered monitors. He had grown older, but the fire in his eyes had not died. Machines and tools surrounded him, but tonight his hands did not work. Instead, they held a small recorder, the same one he used years ago to send his messages into space. Most people laughed at him, called him a dreamer, said he was chasing ghosts. But Daniel knew better. He knew she had been real. And deep in his heart, he knew she would return. He leaned back in his chair, his mind drifting to the past. The night sky had been the same, full of stars, when he first saw her ship. It had cut through the clouds like a silver arrow. He had thought it was a meteor until the ground shook and the forest lit with strange light. Curiosity had led him there, fear in his chest, but wonder in his eyes. And that was when he saw her, Leora, standing among the smoke and shadows, her eyes glowing like the sky itself. She looked like a goddess, untouchable, yet her voice had been soft. "Do not fear," she had said. But how could he not, when everything about her screamed power? Still, he stayed. That night changed everything. He remembered how awkward their first words had been. A human scientist speaking to a being from the stars. She had asked about his world, his people, his dreams, and he had asked about hers, though most answers were hidden behind silence. Yet with every meeting, that silence grew shorter. She began to laugh at his jokes, even the bad ones. She watched him work with his hands, amazed that humans could build so much with so little. He showed her Earth's small wonders. The taste of rainwater, the warmth of fire, the beauty of music played on an old guitar. And in those simple things, she had found something greater than all the stars she ruled. Daniel smiled faintly at the memory, but his heart ached, because those days had ended too soon. One night, she had stood before him with tears in her eyes. "I must go," she had whispered, her voice breaking. He had begged her to stay, offered her everything he had, though it was nothing compared to her world. But she had chosen duty. Her ship rose into the night sky, leaving him with nothing but silence. For years he hated the stars, yet loved them too, because they held her. Every night he looked up, hoping, praying that she would return. Now, in the forest beyond the city, Leora walked carefully under the dark trees. She had removed her armor, covering herself in simple human clothes. But even hidden, she felt out of place. Every step reminded her of the choice she had made long ago, and soon she would stand before Daniel again. Would he forgive her, or would he turn away? She feared the answer more than she feared the hunters chasing her. At that moment, Daniel heard something outside. A faint hum, almost like the memory of a ship's engine. His chest tightened. He rushed out into the cold night, his eyes scanning the trees. For a long time, there was only silence. Then, a figure stepped from the shadows. Tall, graceful, her eyes glowing softly even in the dark. His heart stopped. It was her. "Leora," he whispered, his voice breaking, and the years between them vanished in an instant. Leora froze as she heard his voice. Her heart ached with every beat. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to say the words she had buried for so long. But she stood still, afraid. "Daniel," she whispered back, her voice trembling. He stared at her, anger and love fighting in his eyes. "You left," he said sharply. "You left me when I needed you most." The silence after his words cut deeper than any blade. She lowered her head, shame burning inside her. "I know," she said softly, "but I am here now." Daniel's hands curled into fists, his body trembling with old wounds. For years he had dreamed of this moment, but dreams were kinder than reality. The pain of her absence rushed back like a flood. He turned away, his voice rough. "You can't just return as if nothing happened." Her chest tightened, and for a moment she almost broke. But then she stepped closer, her voice firm. "I did not come only for forgiveness," she said. "There is danger, Daniel, danger that follows me here. And if we do nothing, Earth will burn." He turned back, his eyes narrowing. Fear flickered in him, but so did something else. The old fire, the old courage. Even after all this time, he was still Daniel, the man who once faced the stars without fear. And though his heart was broken, some part of him still longed for her. That part would not let him walk away. Not yet. Above them, hidden in the sky, a shadow passed. The hunters had found her trail, but neither Leora nor Daniel noticed. They were too lost in the storm of love and anger that bound them together again. The return. The forest was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of wind moving through the trees. Daniel stood with his fists clenched, his eyes locked on the woman he thought he would never see again. Leora's gaze did not move away from him, her glowing eyes filled with pain and hope at the same time. They were so close, yet the years between them felt like an ocean. One step forward could close the distance. One word could shatter everything. She wanted to speak, but Daniel's voice came first, sharp and bitter. "Why are you here, Leora?" "Why now?" he asked. The hurt in his tone cut through her like fire. "I told myself 100 times you would never return, and yet here you stand." His chest rose and fell as anger fought with longing inside him. Leora lowered her head, the memories of her departure burning in her mind. "I had no choice," she whispered, her voice trembling like the leaves above them. "My people forced me to return to the stars, to command, to lead, but all I thought of was you." Her words hung in the air, soft yet heavy. Daniel shook his head, turning away. "Do you know what it was like?" he asked quietly. "To wake every morning and wonder if it was all a lie, if you were only a dream." His voice broke, and he let out a bitter laugh. "You left me with nothing but the sky, and the sky does not answer back." Leora took a step closer, her hand reaching toward him, though she did not dare to touch. "I heard your voice, Daniel," she said. "I heard your message, the one you sent into the stars." His head snapped toward her, his eyes wide. "You heard it," he whispered. She nodded, a tear glimmering in her alien eyes. "Every word, every breath, it reached me, and it brought me back." For a moment, Daniel's anger wavered, replaced by the weight of old memories. He remembered their nights by the fire, her fascination with the simplest human things. He remembered her laughter, rare but real, and how it had made him feel like he was not just a man, but something greater. But the wound of her leaving was still raw, even after all the years. "Why should I trust you again?" he asked coldly. "What if you leave once more? What if duty calls you back to the stars?" Leora's face hardened, her voice gaining strength. "This time, I will not leave, Daniel, because I have left the stars behind me. I have left everything." She took a deep breath, her eyes burning with truth. "I came back not only for you, but because Earth is in danger, and I cannot fight this alone." Her words struck him like thunder. Danger, Earth, fight. These were not empty words. They carried the weight of truth. Daniel frowned, confusion mixing with fear. "What do you mean?" he asked. Leora's voice dropped, quiet but sharp. "They are hunting me, Daniel, and they will come for anyone near me. They will come for you and for your world." The forest seemed to grow colder, shadows deepening around them. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine, not from the night air, but from the way her voice shook with warning. He wanted to run, to deny everything, but he knew Leora never lied. If she said danger was coming, then it was already here. He clenched his jaw, his old stubborn fire rising once again. "So you left the stars, only to bring war here," he said. His words were harsh, but his eyes betrayed something else. A spark, a flicker of the man who once stood beside her without fear. Leora nodded slowly, accepting his anger. Yes, she admitted, but I also came to protect. I came to fight with you, not against you. The night deepened, the forest growing still. But high above, hidden among the clouds, another ship drifted silently. Dark, jagged, like a predator waiting for its prey. Inside, alien eyes watched Leora and Daniel from afar. A voice hissed through the cold air of the ship. She has returned to the human, just as predicted. Soon, we strike. Back in the forest, Daniel turned away, running a hand through his hair. The weight of everything crushed him. He had dreamed of her return, but never like this, never with shadows of war following her. Yet even as anger burned in him, his heart betrayed him. Because despite the years, despite the pain, he still cared. He still wanted her near. Leora took a careful step closer, her voice soft but steady. Daniel, I cannot erase the past, but I can fight for the future. Her words echoed through the trees. He looked back at her, and for a long moment their eyes locked, the air between them heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice rough but firm. Then tell me everything. And so, beneath the dark forest sky, Leora began to reveal the truth. The reason she returned, the enemy she brought with her, and the danger now hanging over Earth. Her return was not just a reunion. It was the beginning of something far greater. And as her voice filled the night, Daniel realized one thing. His life would never be the same again. The threat revealed. The night was heavy, the forest breathing with shadows. Daniel stood frozen as Leora's words sank into his mind. Danger was coming, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. He could feel it in the way her voice shook, in the way her eyes searched the dark skies above them. And though his heart still fought against her, a deeper part of him knew she spoke the truth. Leora lifted her hand, pressing a small device against her wrist. A faint blue light appeared, forming a circle in the air. Strange symbols flickered, maps of the stars bending into focus. She pointed to one, her voice sharp. They track me here, Daniel. I tried to lose them, but their hunters are too many, too patient. They will not stop until I am taken, or until Earth burns. Her words sliced the silence, making the forest feel smaller. Daniel's chest tightened as the weight of her confession grew heavier. What do they want with you? He asked. Her eyes lowered, filled with regret. They want me because I betrayed them. I abandoned command. I chose love over power, and for that, they want me erased. The device flickered again, and the projection shifted. Now Daniel saw dark shapes, ships like daggers drifting among the stars. Their edges glowed red, alive with fire. These are the hunters, Leora whispered. They are ruthless, trained to destroy. They do not forgive, and they do not fail. Her voice trembled slightly, a rare sign of fear. Daniel stared at the images, his fists clenched. He was only a man, standing in the woods with nothing but his tools and stubborn will. And yet these shadows in the sky threatened his entire world. For the first time, he truly understood the scale of her words. Above them, far beyond human sight, the hunters were already near. Their ship hovered silently, its black hull absorbing the light of the stars. Inside, tall figures stood in rows, their armor sharp and jagged, their eyes burning like cold fire. One of them stepped forward, his voice hissing like steel dragged across stone. She hides with the human, he said. She has chosen weakness, but we will show her the cost of betrayal. The others answered in silence, their weapons humming with energy. Back on the ground, Leora placed her hand against a tree, her body tense. They are here, she whispered, her senses alive with warning. Daniel looked around, his heart racing. The forest seemed the same, but he knew she could feel things he could not. He swallowed hard, his voice low. What do we do? She turned to him, her eyes glowing with fierce light. We prepare, we fight, and if we cannot win, then we run. Her words struck him like fire. Daniel was no soldier, no hero. But in that moment, he remembered something she had once told him long ago, that humans carried a strength no alien could understand. Not strength of body, not strength of weapon, but the strength to keep going when everything seemed lost, the strength to fight for love. And Daniel felt that fire rise in him again. A sudden sound shattered the night. A sharp crack, followed by a flash of red light between the trees. Daniel ducked instinctively as the ground exploded near his feet. Leora pushed him aside, her arm glowing as a shield of blue energy flared into existence. "They found us," she shouted. From the shadows stepped 3 tall hunters, their armor black as night, their weapons alive with fire. Their voices hissed through the forest. "Leora of the stars, you cannot hide. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Leora's face hardened, her voice cutting through the night. "You will not touch him," she said, her body glowing with light as her shield expanded. The hunters laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "You gave up the stars for a human. How weak you have become." But Leora stood firm, her figure shining like a star fallen to earth. Daniel's heart pounded, fear clawing at him. But when he looked at her standing against the hunters, something inside him changed. He could not let her fight alone, not again. He grabbed a broken branch from the ground, crude but sharp. It was nothing against alien weapons, but it was enough to remind him of who he was. A man who would not run, a man who would stand. The hunters advanced, their weapons raised. The forest glowed red with their fire, shadows stretching across the trees. Leora's shield trembled under the force, sparks flying into the night. Daniel stood behind her, his voice rough but steady. "If you think I will let you take her, you don't know humans." The hunters paused for a moment, their heads tilting, and in that pause, Leora struck. A beam of light burst from her hand, slamming into the nearest hunter. The forest shook with the impact, trees cracking under the force. The fight had begun. But high above, unseen, more ships moved into position. The hunters were only the beginning, and both Leora and Daniel would soon learn the true scale of the war that had come to Earth. Love in the shadows. The forest was burning in silence after the battle, smoke rising from the broken ground. The hunters had been forced back, but their shadow still lingered in the night. Leora stood tall, her shield fading, her breath sharp and heavy. Daniel leaned against a tree, his hand shaking, the branch he had used as a weapon still clutched tightly. They had survived, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like a warning. Leora turned toward him, her glowing eyes softening. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice low. Daniel shook his head, though the tremble in his hands betrayed him. "I'm fine," he whispered, "at least for now." Her gaze stayed on him, as if she could see the truth beneath his words. Slowly she stepped closer, and for the first time since her return, there was no shield between them, no fire, no war, only silence. The smoke drifted through the trees, wrapping them in shadow. Daniel's heart raced, but not from fear. It was the nearness of her, the memory of her touch, the ache of years apart. He looked into her eyes and saw something he thought he would never see again. Not the commander, not the alien warrior, but the woman who had once sat by his fire and laughed at his clumsy jokes. The woman who had once held his hand, as if it was the only thing that could anchor her to this world. "You should have stayed away," Daniel said quietly, his voice trembling. "Bringing them here, it could destroy everything." Leora lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I know," she whispered, "but I could not stay away from you, even if the stars themselves burned for it." Her hand lifted, hovering near his face, hesitating. For a moment, she pulled back, afraid he would turn away. But Daniel did not move, and finally her fingers brushed against his cheek, soft, trembling, desperate. The touch shattered something inside him. All the anger, all the bitterness, all the years of waiting collapsed under the weight of that single moment. He closed his eyes, leaning in her hand, his voice rough. "Why, Leora? Why me?" Her lips parted, her breath warm in the cold night. Because you are human, she whispered. Because you are more than the stars, because you made me see what power could never give me. Her words trembled with truth, each one like fire against his wounds. They stood close now, their bodies almost touching, the world around them broken. But inside that circle of shadow, there was only them. Daniel raised his hand slowly, his fingers brushing against hers. The years melted away, and it was as if time itself had paused to give them this one fragile moment. "I should hate you," he said, his voice heavy with pain. "But I don't. I never could." His eyes burned as he whispered, "You left me, but you never left my heart." Leora's breath caught, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I left the stars, Daniel. I left everything, and I will not leave you again." Her voice shook as if the words themselves were an oath. Daniel's heart twisted, torn between fear and longing. He wanted to believe her, to let her back in, but the danger pressed close. "You don't understand," he said. "They will come again, stronger than before." Her lips curved in a sad smile. "I know," she whispered, "and that is why we must fight together." The smoke cleared a little, revealing the moon above them, pale and distant. Its light fell across her face, softening the sharpness of her alien features. For a moment, Daniel forgot the war, forgot the hunters, forgot the danger. He only saw her, the woman who had returned to him after years of silence, the woman who had chosen him over the stars. Leora leaned closer, her forehead brushing against his, her voice barely more than a breath. "If this is the end, I would rather face it with you." Daniel's eyes closed, his chest heavy with emotion. He wanted to pull her close, to hold her as he once did, but before he could, the forest whispered with movement. A sound carried on the wind, low and distant. Not the hunters, not yet, but something else. A reminder that the night was not safe. They pulled apart slightly, their eyes locking. The moment was broken, but not lost. It lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken promises. Daniel straightened, gripping the branch tighter. Leora's glow dimmed, her warrior's mask returning. The shadows thickened once more. But now they were bound, not just by love, not just by memory, but by the storm they would face together. Far above, the hunter ship moved silently across the sky. Its commander watched the forest, his voice cold and sharp. "They cling to each other like prey in the dark," he hissed. "But love will not save them when the storm comes." And the storm was already on its way. The battle for Earth. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, but the forest was already alive with fire. Red beams cut through the trees, tearing bark and stone apart. Daniel and Leora ran between the shadows, their breaths sharp, their hearts heavy with the weight of what was coming. The hunters had returned, not 3 this time, but many, their ships crawling through the sky like black predators. The earth was no longer hidden, it was now a battlefield. Leora raised her arm, her shield glowing bright blue as another blast slammed against it. The ground shook, birds scattered into the air, and smoke curled through the rising light. She shouted above the noise, "Daniel, stay close." But Daniel was already moving, his mind racing. He was no soldier, no commander, but he had something the hunters did not. He had human stubbornness, human creativity, and the fierce need to protect. In his workshop, he had built machines from scraps, engines from broken parts, tools from rust and wire. Now those skills burned in his hands. He pulled a small device from his pack, no bigger than a fist, wires twisted around a glowing core. It was a trap he had once designed for experiments, but tonight it became a weapon. He threw it against a tree, and with a crack of light the device exploded, sending shards of energy across the hunters. 2 fell back, their armor sparking, their voices hissing with anger. Leora's eyes widened, shock mixing with pride. "You fight like a human, but you think like a star," she said, her voice tight as she struck another blast toward the enemy. Daniel only smirked, sweat dripping down his face. "You wanted to know why humans are different," he shouted. "This is why." Together, they moved as one, her shield guarding him, his tricks supporting her. The hunters pressed forward, but the pair refused to break. High above, more ships descended, their shadows falling across the forest and fields. The sky darkened even as the sun tried to rise. For the first time, Earth felt small, fragile against the storm of fire and steel. Yet in that storm, two figures stood, refusing to kneel, refusing to surrender. The battle spread beyond the trees, fire racing through the grasslands. Hunters marched in lines, their weapons cutting the ground with every strike. But Daniel knew these lands, these woods, these rivers. He led Leora through paths only a local could know. Every step, every trap, every hidden corner became their ally. Where the hunters saw only wilderness, Daniel saw home. And home was worth fighting for. At one point, they reached an old bridge, wood creaking under their feet. Behind them, hunters charged, their armor glowing red. Daniel stopped, pulling another device from his pack. "This bridge won't hold them," he muttered. Leora frowned. "What are you doing?" He gave her a small, grim smile. "Buying us time." He slammed the device into the bridge's support, and as they crossed, the wood exploded into fire. The hunters fell into the river below, their screams lost in the rushing water. For a brief moment, silence returned. But silence did not last. A deep roar shook the sky, louder than thunder. Daniel looked up and froze. From the clouds above descended a massive ship, larger than any before, its body blocking the sun. It cast a shadow, so wide the forest seemed to drown in night. Leora's face hardened, her voice sharp. "That is their warship. Their commander has come." The hunters paused, kneeling as the ship opened its hull. From within stepped a towering figure, armor black as death, eyes glowing like burning ice. His voice echoed through the air, deep and merciless. "Leora of the stars," he hissed, "you betrayed us, and now you bring your weakness to this dirt world, but we will show you the cost of love." His gaze shifted to Daniel, sharp and cruel. "And we will start with him." Daniel felt the weight of those words crush him, but he did not step back. He stood tall, gripping a broken metal pipe he had pulled from the ground. It was nothing compared to alien weapons, but in his hands it became defiance itself. He shouted, his voice cutting through the roar of engines. "If you want me, you'll have to go through both of us." Leora's shield flared bright, her body glowing like a star fallen to earth. She stepped beside him, her voice steady. "He is not alone." The commander raised his hand, and the warship answered with fire. Beams of red light cut across the land, explosions tearing the forest into pieces. The ground split, trees burned, the air filled with ash and smoke. But through the chaos, Daniel and Leora stood, their figures small yet unbroken. One human, one alien, united not by duty, not by blood, but by love. And in that love, they found the strength to resist. The first true battle for Earth had begun, and the world would never be the same again. The sky burned with fire, the warship's shadow still heavy over the land. Daniel stood with his chest heaving, his pipe broken in half, his body bruised. Beside him, Leora's shield flickered weakly, her strength nearly gone. The hunters pressed forward, their commander's voice shaking the air like thunder. "Submit, and your end will be swift," he hissed. But neither Daniel nor Leora moved. They stood side by side, small against the storm, but unbroken. Then something changed. Daniel, with his mind racing, spotted the warship's underbelly glowing with power. It was preparing a final strike, a blast that would burn the forest, the city, perhaps the whole valley. He turned to Leora, his voice sharp. "Tell me that ship has a weakness." She hesitated, then nodded, her voice low. "The core, hidden beneath, but no weapon I have can reach it." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his stubborn fire alive again. "Then we make one." He pulled the last device from his pack, the one he had never dared to test. A core of unstable energy, unstable enough to destroy him if it failed. Leora's eyes widened as she realized his plan. "No, Daniel," she whispered. "If you throw that, you may not survive." He gave her a small smile, his voice steady. That's the difference, Leora. Humans don't fight because they are stronger. They fight because they must. Before she could stop him, he sprinted toward the battlefield, fire and smoke tearing at his skin. The hunters raised their weapons, but Leora covered him, her shield blazing one last time. Daniel ran to the edge of the burning cliff, the warship looming above. He shouted with all the strength left in his lungs. This is our world, and you will not take it. And with a final cry, he hurled the device into the ship's core. The sky split with light, brighter than the sun. The warship shook, its engines screaming as fire consumed its body. The hunters stumbled, their commander roaring in fury. But the fire swallowed them all. The ground trembled, the sky burned, and then came silence. Smoke curled into the heavens, the warship broken, the hunters scattered like ashes in the wind. Daniel fell to his knees, his chest heaving, the air thick with ash. Leora rushed to him, her hands trembling as she lifted him into her arms. His body was weak, but his eyes opened, glowing with defiance and warmth. You did it, she whispered, her voice breaking. He smiled faintly, his voice low. No, we did it. For a long moment, they stayed there, wrapped in silence as the fire burned out. The earth was scarred but still alive. The hunters defeated, but not destroyed. The dawn rose, light spilling across the broken forest. And in that light, Daniel and Leora stood together, stronger than before. She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. I left the stars, but I returned for you, she whispered, her voice trembling with love and sorrow. And now, I will never leave again. Daniel lifted his hand weakly, brushing against her cheek. Then we face whatever comes, together, he said. And in that moment, the stars above seemed smaller, weaker, compared to the bond between them. But high in the sky, beyond human sight, other ships drifted hidden among the stars. Voices whispered through the void, cold and merciless. The hunters have failed, one said. But this is only the beginning, another replied. And as the earth spun quietly below, the galaxy itself seemed to lean closer. Watching, waiting, preparing, Daniel and Leora stood on the edge of the ruined forest. The war was not over. It had only begun, but they were ready. Together they would fight. Together they would endure. And together they would show the stars what it meant to be human.